our first ally is God.
Ain't that right? He ain't lying.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Alpha and Omega Exponent, also known as AOE, where we share different contents to add value to your life. My name is Parfait, and welcome to the channel. If you're not subscribed yet, don't forget to subscribe to join the AOE family. And if you're already a subscriber, welcome back. Anyways, we are continuing with our story time. And the story of today is the story about a very rich man who understood the importance of building allies and was challenged by God. This is the story of Genesis chapter 13 and 14. Without further ado, let's get started. In the previous story, we learned about this man named Abram who heard from God, and God asked him to leave his father's country to go to a land that God himself was going to show him. And at the age of 75, Abram decided to leave his father's house and to listen to the voice of God and to go out into the land and the country that God was going to show him. And in the story of today, we see that fast forward, the same man Abram who left his father's house with his wife and his nephew Lot, Abram became very rich. In verse 2 it says, "Now Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold." So what we hear is that after Abram decided to listen to the voice of God, in return, God also decided to bless him with all of these materialistic things, where he was rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. So listening to the voice of God allows you to receive the blessing that God has for you. And fast forward, after Abram left his father's house, he arrived to this place called between Bethel and Ai. And there it says in verse 3 and 4, it says that there at that place he made an altar first, and there he called upon the name of the Lord. So in the mix of the blessing that God gave him, God made him a very rich man, but also Abram did not forget God. Abram decided to build an altar and to continue to call upon the name of the Lord. So the lesson here is that when we are also blessed by God, it's imperative for us to always remember God, to always remember to call upon God, even if when things are well, our relationship with God should always continue to grow. And the question that we need to ask ourselves as young people is that, who do we call upon when things are doing well and also when we're in trouble? Because as we hear in the story that Abram called upon the name of the Lord. Do we call upon also the name of the Lord when things are well? Or do we call upon the name of other things that we see in the word that does not reflect the image of God? Or do we also call upon things that will bring destruction on our life? The important things to know here is that when things are well and when things are bad, we must call upon the name of the Lord. Moving forward, Abram was with his nephew named Lot. And because Abram's possessions were so great, him and his nephew Lot could no longer dwell together in the same land. So then Abram came and asked his nephew if they could separate together so that there would be no strife between them. And they did so, and they separated in peace. And in this story, the important thing to know that is that Abram separated in peace with his nephew Lot. Although his possessions were so great, the separation that him and his nephew experienced were a peaceful separation. So the question that we need to ask ourselves is that, how do we separate ourselves from others when things are so great with us? Do we separate with others in peace, or do we separate in destruction, or do we separate with hate, or do we separate with anger? We need to learn from Abram and learn that when we go our ways, when we separate from others, when things are great or when things are bad, all separation needs to be peaceful so that there will be no strife between people, because that's how we build allies. Moving forward in the story, in verse 14, it says, "The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, Lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward, and eastward and westward, for all the land that you see I will give to you and to your offspring forever." So God showed to Abram the land that he was going to give to him and to his offspring forever. What do we learn from this story, from this short message here? The lesson is, first, we need to ask ourselves a question, because in the previous stories, we've learned that Abram took a step of faith to listen to the voice of God. So God decided to show him the blessing that he had reserved for him. So the question that we need to ask ourselves is that, what has God shown to us about ourselves and about our future concerning his plan for us? This is important because a man of faith, a man who has faith in God, God will show him, God will direct his step forward. So it's important for us to pay attention to the things that God is showing to us about our future, so that we can always be walking on our purpose. Especially as young people, very early, it's important for us to understand how does God speak to us, to understand what is God trying to show us, so that we can start to walk in our purpose and not waste time. Fast forward in chapter 14, there were some wars that took places between different kings, and Abram's nephew Lot was held captive. So in that captivity, there was one person who escaped, and that person came and found Abram and told him that his nephew was held captive. And in verse 13, we hear that he says here that the one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, who was living by the oaks of Mamre, the Amorites, brother of Eshcol and of Aner. These were allies of Abram. So we hear that Abram, although he was thriving, although he was listening to the voice of God, although God was speaking to him, he understood the importance of building and forming allies. And that was important because one of those allies escaped and came and told him that his nephew Lot was held captive. So the lesson here is that it's important to form allies and to be good to them, for in times of war, they will run to you to work with you and to fight along with you. And as young people, as we grow, as we develop, we need to ask ourselves the question of that: who are our allies? And when we know our allies, it's important to be good to them. And we must know that our first ally is God. God is always on our side. We must always have God as our ally. If we don't have God as our ally, then the rest of the thing will fall apart. At first, we need to include God as our first ally, and also include good people, form good alliances with people who we know will run to us, who will fight with us in times of wars. And at the same time, we also need to be allies to other people, so that when they are in times of trouble, when they will need rescue, then in that moment we will also turn and fight with them and rescue them as needed. Moving forward, after Abram heard that his nephew Lot was held captive, Abram assembled all the men of his clan, about 318 of them, and they went out to fight to liberate his nephew Lot. And after they did so, they were able to liberate his nephew Lot. Fast forward, Abram, because of that, was blessed even more. And so the lesson that we take away here is that when you obey God, you will be challenged, but you must rest assured that you will overcome all of the challenges and all of the obstacles, because God is on your side, because God is your first ally. So that's the most important lesson to take away in this story, is that God is our first ally, and we will be challenged when we obey God, but we will overcome all of the challenges because God is our first ally, and learn to form good alliances and to be good to the people who are your allies, because in times of war, they will run to you, they will work with you, and they will fight with you. So that's it. That's all for this story time of today. I hope that this added value to your life. I will see you in the next video.